Hey there, my name is Shannon Mustafer, spirits educator and cocktail consultant. I'm here at Sunken Harbor Club in Brooklyn with
Garrett Richard, Chief Cocktail Officer of the Sunken Harbor Club and Tropical Drinks Evangelist of New York. This is a rare moment for us to be on the same side of a bar at the same time.
I know it's been a long time coming, and this place is beautiful. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, it was great to host you, and I think what's really cool about your drink is the fact that it's like an authentic like Caribbean cocktail, and I think that's a place that like menus need to go more.
Well, I mean, the reason why I wanted to show this one here, the Myrtle Bank Punch, is that, tell me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of what you guys are doing here at the program is to kind of draw on those kind of pre-tiki roots, those tropical cocktails that obviously have to reference the Caribbean resort style punches and then extrapolate upon them and make them modern for where we are now post-tiki. I just want to kind of go back to the roots because that's what I did at Gladys, and then I went off into my own little tiki universe as well.
Which was such a great bar. I'm glad I got to see it before, the world changed.
I kind of got thrown to the sharks, literally speaking, because before opening that program, I knew next to nothing about rum, had not really dipped my toes in the tiki. Like I've been.
So you just went head first in there.
I was there for like 30 days straight, tasting rum and developing the program. Like it got sprung on me. I had a month to do it. And then I just hit the ground running.
It was kind of here. We had a month. They were so busy with downstairs, opening Gage and Tollner, and you and I had done a couple like little events here, and then I asked St. John. I was like, "Hey, how far along are you?" And he's like, "Actually, we could use some help." So, yeah,
like I need you now. Yeah,
it's kind of the best type of job though, is when they're like, "No, we need you. Please jump in right now."
Before you walked into this, obviously there was a little bit of a groundwork because Sunken Harbor Club was started by Zach Overman as a pop-up at Fort Defiance.
Yeah.
And how did you guys kind of like use that as a foundation and then kind of add on to it for this new space as a kind of culmination?
Yeah, it was like a combo of the Sunken Harbor pop-up and the pop-up that I did with Jimmy Colon at Rain's Law Room, Exotica. And it was like, I thought it was so cool to be able to bring those two perspectives together to have a permanent space. Because basically everyone on staff ran some sort of tiki pop-up in New York and basically made these drinks on their day off, like took time to go work more. And now they get to have this be their everyday job, which is like really cool to have. It's like now the pop-up can be real.
Well, what I like to tell people when they're visiting town of late is like, if you want a tiki drink, this is a spot for all the tiki all-stars in the city that kind of had to be refugees from the bars that shut during the pandemic. Could you just let us know like who is here apart from you and Jimmy? Yeah,
we have Chelsea Barrett, who did this really cool tiki pop-up that was like all about like witchcraft, and she was also involved with the Ladies Who Tiki, and she was a bartender, Mother of Pearl. Adam Demarath, who Adam did a whole road trip across the United States this past summer, reviewing 70 tiki bars, which is like crazy to do in like 3 months. He looked pretty good after, doing that many. I thought he was going to look like Nicolas Cage at the end of Leaving Las Vegas when I saw him, but he was pretty healthy after that.
He probably had a lot of coconut water to fortify him.
Yeah, antioxidants, potassium, And then my partner from Exotica, Jimmy Colon, joined us, and it was great to have him here because, I mean, the stuff like flash blending and acid adjusting, we were able to, just jump into that head first and kind of make it less scary for people. I think if one person's teaching everything, it can seem a little foreign, but if like two people are on the same page, like it just seems like a little more like, okay, we can do this, I'm
really glad to see that Jimmy is here with you because I came in a few weeks ago with some friends and I saw you guys behind a bar again. And my thought was like, it must be so cool to have you guys kind of be able to anchor the program and you guys have your understanding already, and maybe you can kind of spread that culture of whatever you have learned via running Rains, which is a totally crazy pop-up. Like I've been in there a few times.
Yeah.
and you guys are just like sweating and
It's
just slinging and
mountains
going
of
so
tickets.
fast.
Yeah. So it makes this seem a little easier. Although we do fill up here really fast. So
Right.
that initial rush, like all of our previous year's experience, it really helps us like get through that first seating here.
Yep.
When you're running Gladys, I mean, I'm sure the people drink these drinks really fast. Like it's a fast turnaround time, right?
It was meant to be fast served, so the bulk of the labor in regards to building the drinks and building that flavor was in the prep, and how we mix things
Yeah.
beforehand. And so it was about just like dispensing, pouring, garnishing, and then it's out on the floor. But yeah, it was breakneck. I mean, we had nights where we had like a 2-hour wait, people standing outside, and you just look up and you look down, and 200 covers later,
Drinks gone
it's over.
in a second.
Yeah. What I loved about that experience was learning how to take tiki recipes, which I think people experience as intimidating, and kind of modifying them to fit into a format like that, right? It's helped me a lot in doing pop-ups, on behalf of just promoting my own book, or Women Who Tiki pop-ups. It's down to a science where I can walk into almost any venue, and providing the team on site has been responding to my emails for the weeks, leading up to that.
That's a key, though.
We can whip that prep together for 600 covers in a few hours.
Yeah, I think prep for like any sort of tropical style bar, it's like it either makes or breaks you. It's like the people that take the time to make the syrups and juice and have everything accurate. It's like you can't run Second Harbor Club without it. For a while, it was myself and Steven, our former head bartender, and Jimmy, like making everything. But now luckily we have more people learning the techniques and the syrups. I feel like that's like teaching that is like a whole separate thing from teaching people how to bartend. Is like to be very specific with like reading like syrup recipes, infusions, all that kind of stuff. It's like, did you find that to be the case with your book and with Gladys?
Yeah, we had to kind of figure out as we went, like how we were going to handle that task of production. And initially, me as beverage manager would kind of like oversee it, and then start to delegate it to members of the bar team. And then maybe like 3 years in, we realized collectively, because of the volume and because of the increasing complexity of the serves, that we just needed to have a dedicated person who was hands-on on the process from start to finish. And there were maybe some things that bartenders could do, like very simple things that had 2 parts. But after that, I didn't want to burden the bar team with that level of prep because they were so busy to service.
It's like 2 levels of speed. Like the bar is like moving super fast, and the person making your syrups, like you want them to be very.
They need
like,
to be moving slow
thorough,
and paying attention.
Slow, dedicated. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 different mindsets. Because I think there are a lot of programs over the years that have brought in dedicated prep teams.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And it used to be bar backs initially. And now I think that people are looking for a prep person that has some bar experience, or at least gets the logic behind the builds. And so I'm kind of looking for the emergence of a new kind of type of staff within a bar team that is focused on, building that crucial element.
That was the case at Existing Conditions,
Yep.
where we had people that had that, that were former bartenders that were like, I don't want to work service anymore.
They're like, I'm done.
Yeah, I don't want to talk to people, but I want to talk to you and the team and make stuff. And then I kind of adapted that model here, where like Asia, she was a former cheesemonger at Stinky's, and like she makes some of our syrups. And then Andrew, former bartender, doesn't want to bartend anymore, but at Prime Meats actually, and he now is just like making like a ton of our stuff back here, because it's like back here we have carbonated drinks, we have our rum blends, we have syrups, infusions, so it's like a lot of like product mix. And luckily, like anyone that's trying to steal stuff, it's very hard to figure out what's in those bottles. So
I'm not currently working behind a bar, but I do some drinks journalism, and what I'm hearing from my editors is like, we need to give some hacks in these recipes. And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, yes, consumers have been exposed to more products over the past 5 years, and then you add in a pandemic where people are just at home making drinks,
Yeah.
and not only just making drinks, but buying more premiumized spirits. So if you look at the numbers from the industry, they were selling more premium spirits in 2020 than they projected or anticipated. Like people thought it was going to be very skewed towards beer, wine, and value brands, so people were actually investing in nicer bottles.
Yeah, it's like if I'm gonna stay at home, I'm gonna sit with something that's nice, you know.
I think people were trying to recreate the bar experience. They were trying
Yeah.
to reach for that nice old fashioned or that really well done margarita. But again, this is all speculation to me, but I think that's what the consumer was doing. And so now when guests come in, I think they still want those comforting and familiar serves, but they do want something that we can execute at a bar that they can't do at home. And I don't know what
No,
that something is right
I totally
now.
agree. Because I think coming back from that, it's like, let me give it to them all. Let me, you know, because I think, especially in New York, sometimes there's a lot of compromise bars where they're like, okay, we got one refrigerator and you gotta make it work, figure it out. And it's like, yeah, but like, you don't want that to affect like guest experience. And like, I think what you're getting at is that there really is a split in recipes now where there's recipes that are designed for what we serve at the bar and like, you know, have salt solution and tinctures and this and that, but there are also recipes that need to be like given to just home consumers, because I don't want to like force people to centrifuge orange juice at home. Like that's ridiculous. But the thing is, at the bar, like if it works and it's delicious and, you know, sustainable, like why wouldn't you do that?
When it comes to classics, like the old-fashioned Negroni, margarita, Manhattan, what have you, a savvy operator could like really focus on the spirits in the back bar and, you know, educate the consumer and like, this spirit is amazing in this serve, and then they can go home and pick up that bottle and do it themselves because they've had an opportunity to try something that maybe they didn't know to pick out of the shelf at the spirit store.
And that's what's so good about classics, is like slotting in different spirits in it. I think that's where the sort of you can bridge the gap between the like professional recipes and like what people can make on their own, and that's really exciting. That's cool. I feel like tiki tropical cocktails, it's like there's the stereotype of like it's a big glass, it's got a bunch of garnish, but I feel like within the genre there's so many different ways of styling drinks. There's so many ways of serving them. I mean, in your book you have a photo for every single cocktail, and like that's got to be very difficult to style that over and over again. I mean, when you're doing that, what is going through your head? What is your inspiration, and like do you have like in your mind like a cohesive aesthetic for like what your tropical cocktail is?
I want to say yes and no. So, you know, my
Yeah.
springboard was, this is like 2015 when I first started mixing Mai Tais, and it had nothing to do with tiki before that. And I was like, wait a minute, rum is so awesome and so diverse and it's so slept on. And I wanted to give people drinks that would elicit their curiosity around that. So the program initially was styled after like classic Cuban drinks and classic Caribbean resort drinks. But as I got more into rum, I realized that tiki had the best options in terms of like really fully illustrating the possibilities of the category. And then as I started making tiki drinks, I realized that you could use any ingredient. It's really about flavor building and layering. So
Yeah, that curveball, as Jeff says, and like every drink has to have that weird curveball, you know.
so I asked myself the question, what would Don do? Right? So if Don had mezcal and different agaves, I'm certain he would have used it. It doesn't really matter what spirit category we're talking about. It's about the balance of flavors. And then underneath that, you know, living in New York, presenting drinks to people that live in America, I thought, well, let's branch out into Latin spirits. Let's branch out into, you know, sochu, sake, anything that evokes a tropical climate, and
You
then
see
match it up.
pandan everywhere.
That's
you
what I'm
know?
saying, like
Yeah.
match it up with whatever
Yeah.
ingredients go with that kind of area, and that's exotic now. It's not just pigeonholed into Polynesia or Caribbean, it's just like anywhere with palm trees.
It's an adventure in a glass, right?
Indeed.
Like when putting it together. We definitely have that thought at Sunken Harbor. I'm definitely less like rum focused specifically, but I think what's interesting about both of our styles is that we recognize that there's like, outside of just the canon of tiki and tropical drinks, there are references to other cocktails, like things from the 19th century, things from, Savoy cocktail book, and like that all of these drinks sort of talk to each other. And if you just kind of myopically look at the genre as just, well, these are the drinks and that's it, like you're missing half the conversation by doing that. I mean, we have a cocktail on the menu that's carbonated champagne drink called the Singapore Burra Peg. The concept comes from Charles H. Baker, but it also takes from the original Straits Sling. It takes a lot of those elements because those were two cocktails that existed at the same time. And like, yeah, they would definitely work together because they're of that same era. They are of that same story, And I think for me, that's really exciting when I can sort of like reference things across time from each other. I mean, the El Diablo is a similar thing where you had the Tequila Sunrise, the original one, the non Eagles version that had cassis and grenadine, and like that was obviously very contemporary to what the El Diablo is, which had cassis and ginger, and both had tequila. So I hope that those conversations continue because I think if we just say drinks are tiki drinks or tropical drinks, I think we're missing half the story.
Well, I mean, to your point, I'm a big fan of the Jungle Bird because I regard it as like the holy trinity of the genre. There's a zombie that kind of like started a craze.
Yeah.
The Mai Tai that kind of made it like commercial and mass market via the mixes that people could buy at home. And then the Jungle Bird was kind of like the last gasp of tiki culture and tropical cocktails and cocktails in general, right? In the 70s. And I ripped on it so many times. I regard it as
the Kingston sound system,
Yeah,
right?
that's like a white, Jungle Bird.
Soursop, right?
I'm using soursop instead of pineapple, and everything's kind of
underrated fruit for sure.
I wish people use that and Suze a little bit more. But what I'm driving at is this idea of this bird that travels, right? So the Jungle Bird. I've done that riff. I've done a drink called the Magpie that uses a bourbon base that's also inspired by the Jungle Bird. And so where does a magpie land? Because a magpie is known for picking up little colorful bits of things to build its nest. And so I love the Jungle Bird as like a way to kind of like reinvigorate the tropical drink genre because I think it gives a lot of room to like pick different inspirations from different amaros, bitter liqueurs, different spirits, but it's still based off a very easy template. It's like a sour cross with a Negroni. And that's something everybody can relate to.
Very approachable for people. We use the Jungle Bird to introduce people to the Black Magic here, which is super obscure drink, only the Illuminati of like.
Wait, what's in it?
The Black Magic is a drink from the Mai Kai.
Oh snap! Okay.
But it's one of their beautiful snifter drinks that has coffee and citrus, which I fell in love with that combination because you don't see that in cocktails very often. But I realized it's going to be hard to just get people to like get on board with that. So we use the template of the Jungle Bird to introduce the idea of the Black Magic to people. So and now instead of just a sort of coffee citrus punch, you have a bitter coffee citrus punch, which people in Brooklyn love that type of flavor profile. We use select Amaro in that to marry it with cold brew coffee and a couple other layers in there.
I mean, in Brooklyn, coffee and Amaro is all the rage, so you can't really go wrong with that combination. But again, the Jungle Bird, I mean, I feel like someone should write a book on it because I think it was like the gateway drug to get people back into tiki. I mean, think about what Giuseppe Gonzalez did, probably at Dutch Kills, but then really more prominently
at Painkiller,
and then at Suffolk Arms, to reinvigorate that recipe and to get bartenders to take rum drinks seriously again. Because prior to that, I don't think bartenders were really very interested in working with rum. At least not in the craft movement.
when I started, which was a little bit before Painkiller, you kind of got made fun of for being into that, like in a and working
like,
in a cocktail
why?
bar.
Yeah.
You know, like derisively called like blue curacao or something. You know, like, and it was like just people didn't understand it yet that like this is the hardest genre to work in, like other than molecular, which is a different conversation, but like to execute this well and consistently, it's very difficult. And it was interesting to see that transition where people that were like making those 3 ingredient cocktails then decided to try and make those 9, 10 ingredient cocktails, and just being like, yeah, okay, now you see how hard it is. Yeah.
I contend that tropical cocktails and tiki are very culinary. And so if you're someone that is just like in the flavors and not necessarily married to specs or married to recipes and have an adventurous template, then the world is your oyster, so to speak, in regards to just everything is fair game. And I think that the canon of pre-Prohibition era cocktails that were handed to us via books, they just didn't have all that stuff available to them at the time. But if you really dug deep, I mean, you look at any bottle back here, it's not like it's just one liquid in that bottle, right?
No.
You know?
No, many of them aren't.
The rums have a couple different marks, be it like light or heavy rum from the same distillery or different islands. Or if you look at the liqueurs, 15 to 20 ingredients in there. But I think tiki makes it more explicit that you're dealing with multiple ingredients, whereas I think other styles kind of put blinders on you.
And ironically,
going on.
These complex drinks are supposed to be approachable. Like something like a martini riff, like the Rolls Royce or something. Like it's very possible you serve that to somebody and that's not a drink that's for them. Ideally, like these drinks should be like off the bat like good to like 90% of the people that have them if they're done well.
But you mentioned a martini. Look, a gin has 8 to 9 botanicals in it, depending on the brand.
Yeah.
And then the vermouth, same situation. So people think it has 2 things, but it really has 20 things in it.
So really, we're just all as complex as tiki drinks. It's just a matter of like seeing the layers and the matrix of it.
Like how transparent is that?
Yeah.
You know? Today, I'm going to mix up a foundational cocktail that's pivotal to the genre called the Myrtle Bank Punch. A little background in this drink. In the 1880s to the 1930s, there were grand resorts in the Caribbean that were meant to serve a welcome cocktail to their guests to kind of set the stage for their arrival at the desk. The person working the desk or the barmaid would give you the key and give you something that was like a grog or a cider or maybe a beer. And so hotels, travel, and simple sessionable drinks kind of go hand in hand. So without further ado, let's mix this up for you. So I'm gonna start with the sweet and sour. That's kind of like the classic way to build a drink. With that in mind, I'm gonna start off with 3/4 ounce of fresh pressed lime juice. Now, the original recipe calls for cherry herring, which is a cherry liqueur that is in the middle ground between a Luxardo, something kind of dry, or something sweeter. I'm gonna do a bit of a modification here. I'm gonna start with 1/2 ounce of grenadine instead of the honey syrup you might see in some of those renditions. And then I'm gonna top it off with 1/4 ounce of the cherry herring. So what I'm looking for here is that bright, fresh acidity from the pomegranate juice. And a little bit of that you pick up in the cherry liqueur, but you still get a little bit of sweetness, but it's not overly intense. Now, the main star of the show, long fermented pot still Jamaica rum made according to the methods that were ubiquitous on the island in the 1930s. So you got a little bit of extra funk to it, but they did let these rums age for a couple years in a barrel just to give it a little mellowness, but you still get that je ne sais quoi that is unique to the island. I'm gonna pour in 2 ounces. Now, last but not least, we gotta shake it. I'm gonna be using crushed ice, but if you use cubes, that's fine. You just may need to shake a little harder and a little longer in that event. So I like to do what I call shake it till you wake it and do it until it's too cold to hold. I got my glass prepped with some crushed ice. Got that nice, beautiful red color that lets you know you're in a tropical place. I'm gonna add a little ice on top. A generous mint bouquet, which is gonna pick up the aromas of that kind of funky, floral Jamaica rum. And an orange flag. Not too unlike serves of like sherry cobblers and things of that nature that you saw at the turn of the century, signifying that you had in your hands a fancy drink. With that being said, welcome to the tropics, Myrtle Bank Punch.
Shannon, thank you so much for coming to Second Harbor Club, making an awesome Myrtle Bank Punch, and just getting to talk with us about what we love, what we like to do.
Thank you so much for hosting us. It's amazing to see what you've done with the bar, and it's wonderful to see you holding up a torch for all things tropical and nautical in terms of drinks here in Brooklyn and NYC. So I hope you guys will come in and visit and be transported. Cheers.